Welcome back, folks. Thought I would give you guys an update on the Honda ADV adventure or misadventure, as the case may be. So yeah, I've been riding this thing, and you know, we had some issues with the water pump. That's, you know what, I think that's just how it's going to be. I've actually let me give you a little rundown on that. So when I bought it initially, within the first couple of miles, I noticed it had a little bit of coolant seeping from the weep hole. So I brought it to the dealer. They agreed we'll replace the pump under warranty, so they put a new pump on it. They did put a pump on there initially that turned out to be defective. It was cracked from probably from shipping, and they put another one on. That pump also developed a leak. Same exact type of leak. Very, very small amount of coolant was dribbling out of the, or seeping out of the weep hole. So they agreed to replace it again. And now we're at a point where that pump is also leaking a little bit of coolant. So I reached out to the dealer, and again, I'm not at all bad-mouthing the dealer. The dealer did nothing wrong. They did everything they were supposed to do. So we discussed it a little bit further. I'm like, listen, I want you guys to know I'm not upset with you. Let's just come to a conclusion. Is this normal? Is this normal for this bike to have this issue? And the thing is, they don't sell a lot of these. The ADVs and the PCXs don't really sell, at least up here in the Northeast. Probably more in the major cities like Boston, New York, LA. They probably sell a ton of these. But they don't sell a lot of them up here in New Hampshire, where I live. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen any PCX or ADV of any kind in my area. So I'm probably one of like 5 people who's ever bought one from this dealer. So they don't see this a lot, and they did everything that they thought needed to be done. So we finally reached out to Honda because I was about ready to bring it back for another water pump. Honda's official answer was it may seep coolant, and it may require a few, they didn't really say how many miles of break-in time. So that actually tracks because it is a mechanical seal. It's not a rubber seal that's gone bad or anything. It's a mechanical seal. It has 2 components that rub against each other. 2 hard surfaces, one ceramic and one, I believe, stainless steel. And if there is even the slightest imperfection in either of those 2 surfaces, if you're a machinist, you know what I'm saying. We're talking at the micron level here. Then it may seep coolant. Eventually, they say it should stop. That is Honda's official answer. And if you do buy one of these, I'd love to hear from you. Do you see coolant seeping from the weep hole? Because I certainly do. In fact, I've been keeping track of it. So this is what we're talking about. We're talking like a drop of coolant leaking out of there. And it's, if it wasn't leaking onto the O2 sensor, I wouldn't be too concerned. But, you know, I'm just trying to keep an eye on this issue and make sure that the little tiny hole up there, yeah, that's where it's coming from. And I've had people say that, you know, honestly, really almost every motorbike to some extent has this problem. So, bottom line, I'm not concerned about this anymore. We've gone through enough water pumps to know that this is probably standard behavior. Now, if you notice, coolant level's not really going down either. So, that brings me to my next point. One of the suggestions, or just kind of an off-the-wall thought that the service manager had was, well, it might be possible that your radiator cap could be bad. And what could be happening is the pressure isn't being released when it's supposed to. So as the coolant heats up, it expands, and it will pressurize the system to the point where it needs to go somewhere. It's too much coolant in a constricted volume of space. So what happens is that coolant has to go somewhere. It actually goes through the radiator cap, through a pressure relief valve, and into the overflow tank. So my thought was, along with them, oh, they're loving each other. What if the radiator cap is defective? So the service advisor, or service manager, said, well, if you bring it in, we'll swap it out and see what happens. I don't want to give this thing up for another week or two, because I know they have a very busy schedule, and I kind of want to enjoy this bike a little bit. So I went ahead and I bought a radiator cap. I've already swapped the cap out, and it made no difference. So this cap cost $60. This is a good part. I'm not getting rid of this. I'm going to hang on to it. That's the original one. The replacement is on the bike. I did spend $60 that I didn't have to, just for my own peace of mind. So bottom line, for the PCX and ADV scooters, this is probably a normal thing. It's just the nature of the beast. Keep an eye on your coolant levels and make sure it doesn't gush out. And if I have to replace the pump at some point down the road, I am not even remotely worried about it, because it cost about $30. and doing the pump, I just have to remove a few fairings, and it's like a couple of bolts, and it's done in about an hour. Now, I've been on this bike pretty much for the past 4 hours. Holy shit. Have I really been on this thing for 4 hours today? That's impossible. I left the house at around lunchtime. It's now 4 o'clock, and I'm just getting home. So I spent some time on this bike today. And you know, the more I ride it, the more I kind of fall in love with it. It really does its job well. Everything about it is perfect. I mean, there's no surprises. It handles like it looks. It's a little high off the ground, so you know so I'm coming off a 98 Honda Helix. That was the last bike I really put any handlebar time on. So that bike was very long and very low to the ground. So it was kind of a canyon carver. I mean, that thing was great. It was great on the highway too. But this thing, it's a little high off the ground, shorter wheelbase. It's not meant for, highway travel. It's not meant for long distances at high speeds. That's just not the way it's built. I knew that going into it. So taking this onto, if you're from New Hampshire, we have a road called 101. It is kind of a highway, but kind of not. The speed limit is 55, but people typically do 70. I've had this on 101, and it did fine. At 65 miles an hour, you're able to keep up with traffic and kind of take care of business. But it is squirrely, because if you get a cross breeze, it gets hairy. I mean, it really does. It's not a very heavy bike. And again, you're higher up off the ground than you are than other, some other bikes. I think the seat height is, let's find out. I have a tape measure here somewhere, don't I? What is the seat height? It's actually published somewhere in the specs. And somebody asked me how tall I was. Somebody who wanted to know more about, how does it feel? It's about 33 inches off the ground, but I'm on the center stand, so about 32 inches. I am 5'7", I believe. Yeah, I'm about 5'7", 5'6", average height. So I do just fine on this thing. I have more than enough leg room. I have plenty of leg room. The one thing I've noticed is the seat does get a little bit rough over time. Yeah, right here it's a little rough, a little hard. So, you know, if you're a heavier person, you might not like this bike. I'm not terribly overweight. What am I? I'm a little over, about 180 pounds. Which is actually what I weighed in high school, so I'm doing something right, I guess. But anyway, so it's not your long-term comfort cruiser. People are using these on cannonball runs, and God bless them. So let's talk a little bit about, so I was in an accident. Not a terrible one, but I broke my leg, and I haven't ridden since. And that was back in 2016. August of 2016. August 22nd. It is now August 10th. Of 2024. My first couple of rides on this bike were hairy because I was very gun shy, very nervous, very afraid of what could happen because I've already been in an accident. And so I have that still in the back of my mind. But today was the first day where I actually went on a ride and enjoyed the experience. I enjoyed it because the weather was perfect, traffic was light, and there are tons of bikes on the road right now. New Hampshire is I think we have like one of the highest rates of licensed motorcycle riders in the country. And I'm one of them. I never gave up my license. But there are bikes everywhere. Everyone's out having a good time. So I felt kind of at home, and I started to dig into corners a little more and really get to explore the agility of this bike a little bit. And it's making me happier that I bought this. I almost didn't buy this bike or any bike for that matter, because I was like, I'll never ride again. And I think I'm past that. I will statistically be hit again. It's just a matter of when. Statistically, I'll probably get into another accident. Let's talk about maintenance for a second. So, first initial oil change is done. I did it twice in the first 600. No, I did it once at 300, once at 600 miles to flush out anything in the engine. I think we're at a point where we can flush out the rear drivetrain. So I went and picked up a bottle of Honda HP4M I had to order this online. I could not get this at my dealer, and they wouldn't order it for me because they'd have to buy a whole case of it. Apparently, there's not a lot of folks walking in looking for this stuff, so they don't even stock it. Go figure. I wanted to do the final drive oil when the bike was still new because I just feel that anything that might be trapped in that from the manufacturing and machining process should probably be flushed out and replenished to ensure the long life of that rear drive. The engine's good. So that first initial oil change was disgusting. The second one was actually quite clean. So I think we're doing the right thing. So 300 and 600 miles, the 600 mile oil change was actually very, very clean. So let's take a look at that rear drive, see what it looks like. I'm going to grab the service manual, which is currently out of print. I got lucky and I found me a copy. Just before they took them off the market. And we're going to take a look at our final drive oil. So I figured now's a good time to do it. Yeah, this is a tool that my dealer doesn't have. It's a pressure tester for that particular style of radiator cap. And they up front told me we don't have that tool. We just don't have that tool anymore. So or they never had one. So let's find the final drive oil. Change requirement specs. Here we go. So they're calling for new crush washers. I don't have a new crush washer, so I'm going to reuse the old one. So we're looking at the bolt. So the top bolt, first one in, is our fill. And the bottom bolt, the one just below that, is our drain. So and there's not going to be a lot of oil in there. It's going to be pretty light. Let's take a look and see what that oil looks like. And see if I'm making the right call, or if I'm actually overdoing it. Probably the former. Get my ratchet set. I did buy myself a new torque wrench. I didn't have a good one for the lower torque readings. So let's take a look. Now the bike has been ridden. You want to do this when the bike is hot. It flows out better. And anything that is that could be in suspension will be in the oil. So looks like a 12 millimeter to me. So this is our fill. And this little guy right here, this should be our drain. And you can tell because it has a copper washer on it. That's going to be your dead giveaway. And I don't think I can get to it with a ratchet. No, I'm going to need to use a wrench. So you have to pull the belt cover off. So this is normally something you do as part of your belt change. But yeah, like I said, I don't have a swivel that can take care of that. Yeah, no, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to pull the whole belt cover off. There's no need for that. Let me grab a wrench. So I was a little shocked by just how difficult it was to find that oil. And I bought exactly what the book said to use. That's what I bought. And it was the HP4M. That is what it calls for. But these can get pretty nasty pretty quick. And I just want to see how bad it looks at the 700 mile mark. And it's hot. Boy, howdy, is it hot. So it's not really, there's not a lot of oil in there. And that's why I want to make a habit of changing this pretty much at every other oil change. Because look at how much oil is not in there. It's pretty insane. Yeah, that's not a lot of oil right there. That's pretty much, you know, and it is dirty. Like, it's gonna be dirty. So I'm gonna put this back in there. I can't get a torque wrench on it, but I think I know how tight it should be. Let's put it this way. On my Helix, you know, I got 20,000 miles on that thing, 30,000 miles on it before I got rid of it. Never had a problem. Never used a torque wrench. Yeah, that should do it. Here's our fill plug. Of course, if you strip the bolt, well, it's going to cost money. A lot of money. An amount of money that, well, you'd have to replace actually, no, you could probably helicoil it. If you really did that, you could helicoil it. Let's take a look at this oil. So yeah, you can see the metal in this oil. I mean, you can really, I don't even need to pour it into a clean container. You can see it's metallic. There's a lot of metal in there. That's normal. Totally normal. Not even a concern. That's why we're changing it. Okay? That's why we're changing it. So all you got to do, and the book should say this, is to put in oil until it dribbles out. Fill the final reduction case with recommended oil. It's going to give you an amount here. Let's see. Does it say it? So just below the hole. So just as it starts to pour out, that's where you're going to stop. And we're going to use a ketchup bottle. Let's see if that'll work. If not, I have other options. I should be able to stick this in there. Let's see. I have to break this off. Maybe. Let's remove this little thing here. Did it come off? All right. Fire in the hole. All right, I'm gonna put something down here. I'm gonna put the drain pan under it. So the color isn't that far off. It's just you can see there's a lot of metal. New bike, breaking in, you're gonna get metal. Do I want that metal to continually circulate throughout the system for the next, God only knows how many miles? No, I don't. I'm just gonna squirt it in there until it doesn't take anymore. I think that's it. Again, it doesn't take a lot. I can see the oil level. If you zoom in here, let's see if we can see it. You can see. Let's see if it'll take a little more. You want to pack that shit in there until it starts dribbling out onto the ground. Just like that. And just kind of let it dribble out. You don't want it overfilled, otherwise it'll start to cavitate, or you're gonna have problems. It'll aerate. You can see the new oil mixing in with the old. Look at this. Can you see that? Anyway, so that's full. We're just going to let the remainder dribble out. So how much did this oil cost me? About, I think it was $30 shipped. It wasn't cheap. But I have enough for about a dozen oil changes, so I'm not too concerned about the cost. Just get it done at least once early on, and then, you know, throughout I'd say every other oil change. I think the spec is every belt change, like around every 12 to 14,000 miles. I think that's the expected interval. But this is one of those services you do not want to forget about. And that is because on some of these scooters, and I've seen this happen on forums, like more than once, on the old Helix and Elite 150, 125 forums. You know, someone would report, oh, I'm getting a horrible noise from my drivetrain. What do I do? And unfortunately, there's nothing you can do. Because so some of the bearings in this final drive are replaceable. Easily replaceable. But there's a couple of needle bearings in here, at least on the older models. The new ones could be different. But there's a couple of needle bearings in here that cannot be replaced. You have to replace half the engine case because there just isn't a replacement part available, and they can't be pulled out easily. Even with a blind bearing puller, you're still not going to get it out. unless you know of somebody with a machine shop who can machine the bearings out, sleeve them, and do all that happy stuff. But nobody wants to do that. That's expensive, and it's often not worth it. But changing this particular oil here is the best assurance or insurance against having to replace your engine case because you let it go too far. Changing the oil on a regular basis will also help reduce the likelihood of a seal failure, because those seals, you know, when they get clogged up with, you know, debris and gunked up oil, they're going to fail. So again, this is one of those services you probably don't want to forget about. And for myself, I do it every other oil change. It doesn't take more than a few extra minutes, and I just get it done. So about 720 miles, we changed out that oil. So I'm gonna wipe that up. Probably put some newspapers down next time, because, oh wait, I don't even subscribe to a newspaper, so that's not gonna work. Anyway, probably gotta clean this thing up a little bit and call it a night. I got work to do. I gotta mow the lawn. I gotta do all that happy crap too. So anyway, now you know how to change your oil in your driveline. Don't forget about it, because again, you can total your engine case if you don't do it. Of course, it takes a while, but you see how little oil is in there and how dirty it is already. Just a few miles. And those little speckles in there, that's like bronze. Okay? Do you really want that circulating through? Yeah, look at that. Look at the bottom of that. That's all metal right there. And that's normal. That's normal for your first oil change on your drive line. So let's go ahead and pour this into the waste bucket and see how glittery it is. Now, if I had changed this oil, you know, at a higher mileage, you know, and I've been changing it regularly, and suddenly it looks like this, I'd probably be a little nervous. But it's not that bad. It really isn't that bad. I've seen far worse. But all that at the bottom that you see here, so that's what we're trying to take care of. That's why we're doing these oil changes and these fluid changes on a new machine. Because that glitter, you know, on a you don't want that. You don't want that circulating in there. The book says change it at Christ, I think it's like 14,000 miles. You don't want that stuff circulating in there for 14,000 miles, do you? I don't. I certainly don't. But someone asked me, why are you even thinking about this on such a new machine? Like, why would you do that? Well, simple answer. Because I want it to last. But yeah, this is one of those services that I'd say most scooter owners never do. All right, so I'm looking at the bearing replacement chart, and it does have part numbers for each bearing and the dimensions for the seals. So it looks like they've made an improvement over older models where you actually can replace looks like all the bearings. But on the older Hondas that I'm used to working on, the Elites and the Helixes, there are several bearings that cannot be changed. You either need to replace the entire crankcase half or the outer cover. So that's actually kind of an improvement, that they've made that possible. So, you know, like I said, I mean, I like this machine. It's so far, it's been a pleasure to ride. I mean, I've put What are we at now? Let's take a look at the clock. We are currently sitting at 754 miles. So in 4 hours today, I put quite a bit of that on there. At least 60 miles today, which kind of blows my mind. I didn't realize I had driven it that much today. But I think I started at 600. No, a little more than that. So I think I left today with 670 miles. That can't be. I couldn't have done that many miles today. Well, I did. Don't know how, but I did. And I enjoyed every mile. I have yet to see the ABS activate or the traction control. I have not had either one activate. So that's a good thing. Because you don't want that to happen. You don't want that. You don't want ABS kicking on, because that means you're doing something really wrong. You are wrong, sir. That's the old GN4. So I'm not running GN4 in it. I'm running the synthetic stuff. And let's take a look at our oil level while we're here, while we're talking. I expect a little bit of oil loss. And that's another thing. Because this bike doesn't have any kind of feedback for oil pressure or oil level, it is up to you, the rider, to make sure that you have the correct amount of oil in that crankcase at all times. Because if you don't, well, shame on you. I do expect it to burn oil. Why wouldn't it? All modern engines burn oil. So, that's the one thing, that little trade-off that we have as a society have decided to accept. We have decided that for a little bit more fuel mileage and a little more power, a little bit better fuel mileage and better power output, that we're okay with a little oil consumption. We have made this decision as a populace, apparently. So oil rings, control rings, are a little bit looser than they once were. Okay, we have no oil loss. None whatsoever. I'm going to check it again. That doesn't seem right. Because I changed it over 150 miles ago. Nope. It's dead on. Absolutely dead on, my friends. Actually, dead on. So, oil consumption has actually dropped. So when my first oil change, I did notice a slight drop in oil level from when I bought it until the time I changed the oil. It lost a tad, quite a bit, not a lot, but a little bit. When you're talking about an oil volume of less than a quart, a little bit is a lot. So it did lose a little oil. But since I changed it over to now it's on synthetic oil, no oil loss at all at 150 miles. That is actually quite impressive. I'm impressed. Didn't think I'd say that. Wasn't expecting that. I was expecting it to be down by half or something, like some stupid amount. One criticism I do have, and I think I mentioned this in other videos, the suspension is a little soft in the front. I notice it more so when I'm braking. So there's no anti-dive technology in that front fork. So if you're familiar with Honda's older scooters, the Helixes, the the Elites, they had a trailing link, or is it a leading link suspension design? What it did was it used geometry to counteract nosediving under heavy braking. When we went to hydraulic forks or gas, I think these are gas shocks, there there just is nothing in place to prevent the nose from diving down. And I kind of missed that from the older bikes. The trade-off being a better suspension overall, but you do get a lot of diving if you hit the front brake hard. I had to brake hard today because somebody stopped, like slammed on their brakes in front of me. You gotta watch out for people these days. Nobody knows how to drive anymore. Now, I have heard of some forks that have special valving technology that is linked to the brake hydraulics, and it prevents that kind of a dive by, I believe, closing off the port, or one of the ports, so it firms up the shock. So the valves in the fork that allow the gas to move in and out, you can control that with a special valve, but it doesn't seem to be something that Honda has done on this bike. I could be dreaming. Maybe that technology doesn't exist and I just thought of it in my head. I've actually had that happen before, seriously. But no, it doesn't seem to be the case. Because if you look, the hydraulic hose just goes straight up to the handlebar, and there's nothing in there to prevent nose diving. The rear brake, the one complaint I have with the rear drum is it's not very precise. I would prefer rear hydraulic disc for precision. For braking power, the rear drum is fine. Totally fine. And one benefit of rear drums is they will last forever. You will never have to change your rear drum brakes. It won't happen. They won't wear out. I do wish it had rear disc, just for the precision braking capabilities. Because when you're comparing a hydraulic front brake with a rear cable-operated drum, just the precision braking power, it's more predictable. It's more modularable. Modular? It's easier to modulate your rear brake if it's hydraulic because you get that instant feedback. Rear drum brakes, they don't lock up, or not lock up, but they just don't have, it doesn't seem to be a linear brake force. Linear meaning the amount of pull you have on the lever versus how much braking power is applied. It seems to be all or nothing with rear drums, I found. I've ridden bikes with rear disc and rear drums, and rear disc is nice, but rear drum, it works. Gonna have to live with that one. Either that or I import one from Europe or Asia. And somehow. No, not doing that. Although it would be possible for someone to go over both parts lists and compare them and determine what parts need to be ordered to put rear brakes on a US model ADV160. It can be done. Someone's going to do it. So I'm going to need brake hoses, I'm going to need a caliper, I'm going to need a different wheel. This wheel is not the same as the European one, or the Asian one. Someone's got to put a parts list together for everything needed to convert it to rear disc. I'm sure there's a super fan out there somewhere who will do it, but it won't be me. Well, am I happy? Am I sad? I'm happy. I like it. It's a good bike. So far, my experience has been pretty positive, with the exception of that stupid water pump. But I think we have an answer. Honda says, let it seep a little bit. It's not going to kill anybody. Okay, Honda, your move. All right, guys, thank you for watching. And ride safe.